Hi guys. So I wanted to come on today to be able to share with you guys concrete steps that you could take as a parent, as a high school student for that matter, if you're taking initiative and coming on here on your own, or an elementary school student that's coming here on their own, about how do you learn from home right now currently. Okay, I know I did a quick a story on this a couple days ago, but I hadn't received a lot of feedback, and I think it's important for it to be a resource that you could go back to and also share with anyone that might need this help. The first thing I want to talk about is not being so worried about the little aspects of learning. So, when you're in school or high school or anywhere, you have certain things that you learn at a grade specific level. So, for example, in Sec 1, you might have to write, for example, a descriptive text, or you might have to write a photo essay in Sec 2, etc. Okay. Those are not necessarily skills that you're going to have to use at every single grade level. Not to say that they're not helpful and they don't allow you to experience a great, valuable learning experience, but they're not they are transferable skills to some degree, but you don't always have to write a descriptive text. You don't always have to write a photo essay. So what you want to really just boil down to is what is the learning element that is transferable at any time, space, and need, and really work with your child or by yourself on those skills. So because I come from a language background, and I'm an English teacher and I studied English literature, and now I'm also a content writer, obviously my tendency will be to be more inclined to really grow learning linguistic skills. So we're going to be talking about reading and writing. What I just want to say is just have your kids read, have your kids write. What they're writing, how they're writing it, whether it's an article they decide to write, a journal, a diary, it doesn't matter. What matters is, are they actually being able to write in a manner that's enhancing their learning? What's the difference between writing that doesn't enhance the learning, and what's the difference between writing that enhances the learning? In theory, whatever a child is writing or whatever you're writing is helping you sort of like get better and better at expressing what you mean. Now, as the reader, the corrector, or the parent, what you want to do is just make sure that what the person is initially saying and what they are writing are in line. I'll give you an example. If I'm trying to explain to you that I am mad, and I'm writing that down and I'm explaining to you why I'm mad, the reader must then be able to understand without me voicing it that I am mad, right? And that's what I mean. So when it comes to writing skills, if you want to practice some writing with your kid, just have them write and then re-explain to them what you understood of their writing. And then that kid will then know, okay, I'm not really good at explaining my emotions. What is a word bank I could create to explain why I'm more mad? Now you're actually looking at something that's transferable skill. You're looking at being able to really narrow down, pinpoint how to make the student better at any form of writing, because they're learning no longer a particular thing, an article, a photo essay, a descriptive text, but they're learning how to express themselves. And in theory, the descriptive writing, the photo essay, etc., are all different manners to express themselves. And they could use those things in order to be able to continue practicing that. But it could be as simple as writing a journal. You do not need to learn how to write a photo essay. You just need to be able to understand, did this person actually give a concrete message? That's for the first thing, which is writing. So ways to do this is simply practicing talk. Just talking things out is really important. You could say, okay, can you create a story for me? Just tell me something that happened. Oh, let's play a creative game. Learning through games is amazing. I love learning through games. I wish I could use it more and more in classes, and sometimes I do, but sometimes it's hard because there's a lot of kids and you really want to give each person time. But you could do that at home in a very helpful way. You could be like sitting in a group and be like, okay, name me a place, a thing, and an object, right? A name, a place, and an object, right? And then be like, okay, come up a story with that. So you're working creative skills. That's another way to be able to always be simply working on that. Another thing is playing games that are more that are non-traditional linguistic games. Like, for example, if you're playing something like there's this game I've been playing and I forget how it's Unlock, right? Unlock is something I've used with my students as well, and it's essentially just like it's an escape room. But in escape rooms, you really have to be using your skills, and it's a way for students and for people in general to transfer skills without knowing they're transferring them, right? You're doing equations, not really realizing you're using math, etc. So that's again for writing. The third tip I have for writing is journaling. Just ask your kids to, before going to bed, just tell me about your day. It's also a really good way for you to know if they're having anxiety right now. You're going to be able to read back and be like, oh, you know what? Like, I should be explaining a bit more of this situation to my child because right now this is what they're stressed about. So you're using writing as a cathartic means, which I'll also have a video about later on. You're having basically writing as being a cathartic manner for them to write. But you don't want to stop there. You don't want to just have them to write and then throw it in the garbage. What you want to do is then go back to it and say, where do you think you were clear? Where do you think you could be more clear? What are some spelling mistakes there? And how could we make it better? Editing is a very important skill in writing, and that's something that you want to concretely learn. Okay? So that's it for writing. The takeaway that I want you to have for writing is write. Okay, it's step one. Just don't even worry about your production, just have that done. Edit, right? So write, then edit. Okay, and when it comes to editing, we're looking at grammar and we're looking at checking for understanding. Is what I'm saying the same as what I want to say? Okay, now when it comes to reading, reading is so important. Like reading is in everything. If you're trying to solve a math problem, it's often written like in a problem format. So if Annie's going to the shop and this is happening to her in the shop, how do I transfer this into an equation, right? In reading is essentially what we all do at all times. You're reading when you're on social media, you're reading when you're on Facebook, you're reading when you're watching the news, you're reading when you're watching a movie. So again, reading could be a fun experience. So one thing I love to do, and I usually always do this when I'm doing themes with my students, is Pixar films. Pixar films are the best because they're fast learning experiences, they're fast text to read, but they're high content. Like they're really interesting, they have amazing thematics. And so that's something you could do. Just watch a film with your kid. Just watch a Pixar film, watch an episode of something that you and they enjoy, and then just ask them, what was the main message? Now, when it comes to reading, it's okay. Of course, you have different levels of reading, but you could show a Pixar film to a Sec 5, you could show a Pixar film to a Sec 4, you could show a Pixar film to a grade 2. You just expect a different answer of them, right? If I'm asking that question to like someone in grade 6, I'm looking more for a word, for what's the main topic here. Versus if I'm asking that question to someone in high school in the older grades, then I'm expecting that, well, the main message of this text is, right? And then that they also give me concrete evidence to back up why that's the main message. Theme has to be in Canadian, so I'm talking about Quebec schooling, the main area that I want parents to focus on when they're asking their kid a question. Why? Because it's their Sec 5 ministry exam. It's also something that kids have trouble grasping, and it's sometimes hard to sort of check for understanding for 30 students every time, right? So you have an opportunity to have one-on-one learning, which is very rare. So you could basically just take anything. You're taking any text. You can even take like a Dr. Seuss book. Like I love, love, love Dr. Seuss. You could take a poem. You're just asking, what's the message here, right? And we often don't realize how we know a message. How did I understand that this movie is telling me that love is blind? Well, a lot of things happened, and all those things together accumulate to that message. So you want to ask your child, what is that message and how did you come up with that message? And it's not about like finding like this super like a short story that only this teacher knows, etc. No. Like there's so many resources out there. You don't need to like complicate your life. What are you already on Netflix? What's something that I could use? What's a show that I love and that my kid loves that's really interesting and that it's positive and I could use to sort of like just ask them what the main message is, right? This is also so that's the first thing. So theme. The second thing is research. A second thing you want to do is have interest-based reading. This is something that can get very difficult when you are in school, right? Like, let's say I'm picking a novel for my Sec 4 class. Well, I'm going to pick one novel. Or I'm going to have like lit circles, etc. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like one novel. There's going to be students that love that novel, and there's unfortunately going to be students that absolutely hate that novel. That are going to be like, you just ruined so much for me. And unfortunately, that's the reality of when you have 30 kids. But if you have one kid that could go and pick a book they're reading, what does your kid want to read? If they're into sciences, have them read about science. If they're into cars, have them read about cars. This is a moment to become almost like an expert learner, right? So as a learner that has autonomy on choosing what you want to sort of like consume, what is it that I want to consume? And that comes into your research skills. So you could read fiction if you're someone who loves to read fiction, but you could also read information. If I'm interested even in fiction, then I could actually research how to write fiction, right? And then I'm still consuming something that makes my my skills grow and grow and grow. You to do that with your child as well is to read, but then also take notes on reading. And that's how you're going to check if your child actually understands what they're reading. Because a lot of times miscommunication happens. And that happens because we sort of like find one or two words that are like, ooh, this is super interesting. And we think that's where like the main information is, and that's not. Learning where to highlight. What is the main information in a text? Again, we're now at the point of researching. You want to learn, you want to help your kid research. And in general, reading is really good. Just having them read and absorb more information is amazing. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about is being able to go out there and get resources. So we already talked about this when it comes to reading. We already talked about it when it comes to writing. But what about education itself? We are really lucky right now that a lot of people are creating content. Go ahead, jump on it. I'm not just talking about your child. I'm also talking about yourself. Like, go ahead, jump on it. Like, look at what is it that you want to learn and go and use that time if you have the opportunity to, of course. And one of the things that I find that we have, other than sort of like globally, but just like from Montreal based, Quebec based, is Allo Prof. So Allo Prof is an amazing resource for you to use with your child. I absolutely love it. When I was teaching French as well, I used to use Allo Prof as sort of like a baseline because I find that they have so many good videos and things for children. So that's really, and I used to use it as a high schooler as well. So I actually found out about it when I was in high school, and I used to call them because you could also call them and ask them like questions, etc. So that's really important. And there's a lot of other ones. I'm just saying that one because it's my favorite one. Finally, what I want to say is just this is a moment to not work on just like learning, but becoming a lifelong learner. So like if your kids are bored, if you're bored, you're doing something wrong. Okay, like you want to be that person that's going out and finding information that's suitable for you. I know I'm not talking about like being stuck at home. Like I'm like such someone who like moves all the time. Like I've been having trouble sleeping because I'm just like I have too much energy that I haven't been able to release. But what I'm trying to just say is just go ahead and just learn, right? Just like see what can I do? What can I put out there? How can I use this time to help me grow as a human being, as a person, as a learner, and as and just like in any sphere that you want to grow. This is a time for us to grow as a community. So these were my tips. I hope they're helpful. If you have any questions, please ask me. What I'm intending to do is do a series of these videos and finally, if you're not already doing so, go follow me on Word Covers. So it's Mariam, Mariam, Word Covers on Instagram, and you will be able to have daily content coming in multiple times a day, and you'll be able to have more of a one-on-one communication with me.